start by introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Jody Hart. I grew up on Hayden Station Road. My family moved there when I was about 2 years old. The house has actually been uninhabited for a couple, 3 years, so my dad had to do a lot of work to get the house up to date. It's 109 Hayden Station Road, built in the 1880. The story was my mom, when we moved, all of us, except for my mom, had the mumps or the measles. So there were 5 of us in bed, including my dad. She'd load up the car, run over, empty the car, clean some of the house, come back, get us lunch, load the car again, then go back over, empty the car, clean the house, come back and feed us, and go back a third time. My mom was a workaholic. But I did grow up on Hayden Station Road. I had a great time there. We had a nice big field. We played baseball and football in the backyard. Neighbors across the street, a little older, but we played football with them all the time. I broke my collarbone in his backyard when in 4th grade playing football. Behind our house, we had a couple ponds we'd go skating on and fishing in. A nice stream in the backyard. We had a lot of fun with the water and the woods. Behind our house is all cabbage fields. It's now a development. They put that in when I was in college. Kind of heartbroken to see, the ponds and the stream gone, but that's development. And I was actually came to Oliver Ellsworth when it first opened up in 4th grade. It opened up on my brother's birthday, February 1st, I believe. I believe that was the date it opened. Don't have a whole lot of memories of the school itself because that was a long time ago, 50 years ago. But I remember the pod system for the classrooms. You had the different color carpets for the different grades. First and second, I think, were gold, and then green and blue, whatever the colors were. Interesting setup. It was a terrible education system for me, working your own pace. I'd rather talk to people than work. But I made it through high school. We were kind of isolated. A lot of my friends grew up in Pilgrim Village, and they had a lot of activities going on there, but we were pretty alone where we were at. My 2 brothers and I had a lot of fun. We go down the railroad tracks and take pennies to the tracks to see if we could get them flattened. It worked once in a while. We got some of the glass insulators from the old telephone or telegraph lines. We still have a bunch of them. My brothers and I went through my parents' house after they died and found a handful of those. We still have those. And just a lot of fun growing up in that old house. We'd ride our bikes down to Bart's on a regular basis, 3 miles away. My parents would take us down every Saturday with our allowance of 10 cents, and we get penny candy. If my grandparents came into town, my grandfather, Buka, would give us a quarter. We were millionaires with that quarter to buy penny candy. But it's a nice, quiet town. It's interesting to see it built up so much. But there's a lot of stuff we did. I grew up through the schools. I was very much involved with a band. Mr. Hooper at Sage Park he's an icon. People today, if you ask people my age, who's your favorite teacher? Mr. Hooper, hands down, was a name most people would say even if they were just in band, barely. They loved Mr. Hooper. He was a great, great man. And not only was I one of the first classes to come into Ellsworth, my sophomore year of the high school was when they finished rebuilding remodeling the high school. And the big rock out on Capon Street, wherever it is there, my brother and I and the band were the first group to paint the rock. And it's 1976 because my brother graduated in 77. It was the night before the Windsor football game. We went out and we painted the rock. First group ever to paint the rock after it was moved there. I've heard stories it was on the other part of the school, but when he painted, there was no paint on it. So the band claims responsibility for the first coat of paint. If you strip down, you'll see band. But great time in here in town. Again, I'm very involved with the band. My high school years, we did a lot of called exchange concerts. We traveled to different states and play different jazz festivals we participate in. But I still have a lot of friends from Windsor. Young people don't appreciate Facebook like we older people do because I can keep in touch with my friends from elementary school. I still remember meeting one of my friends, Paul Ross, in kindergarten during a fire drill. He and I are still friends. He's in Chicago, but we still keep in touch through Facebook. And there's still a lot of old acquaintances. I remember playing in Little League. My last year playing Little League, Tommy Sherris was a year ahead of me. He pitched a perfect game in the town championship game. We won the town championship. We were the Pirates in the International League, playing at here in Pequannock. So there's a lot of things I look back on and tell my kids the stories. I love to tell my grandkids, have them hear the stories. 'Cause I love hearing the stories from my grandparents, how times have changed. I remember in school when there's the moon landing, they'd roll, well, there's the summertime, but if there's a rocket taking off, they would roll the TVs in, and we watch TV, watch a special event. And technology is pretty new. The idea of TV and VCRs, and the VCRs are really new for technology back then. But it's a good time to grow up in.
And were there any other questions on the board that you would like to answer? But you did share a lot of good stories.
The population, what it looked like, very white. I very white back then. I think there were 2 or 3 Puerto Ricans when I graduated high school in my class. I looked through my yearbook recently, because a couple years ago was my 40th reunion, and there were more people of color than I remembered. Pond Road was in my mind, it's a small town. It was an all-black street, but it was. I don't remember any issues growing up. We just were people. We didn't see any things like we saw in the 50s and early 60s before I was aware of things. But I just loved the school. Again, you had cliques, you had different people, but did you attend school in Windsor? Let me see. Oh, my neighbors. Mrs. Foy was 70 years old when I moved into the house when I was 2 years old. She was at 101. There's actually a picture of her house on one of these billboards down here. She had sheets all over her floor so she wouldn't scuff the floor. We'd go in, we'd help her mow her lawn, shovel her driveway, but she still had one of those little push mowers. The powerless mowers, she'd mow her back lawn on her own. It's 70, 80, 90 years old. She was nonstop. But she was a real interesting woman. Very frugal. That's the politically correct word. Frugal woman. But she was a sweetheart. Some of the other questions. I do not live in Windsor. I live up in Springfield, Mass. My parents left town about 20 years ago. They realized that the one house with a 1 bathroom, 4 kids in 1 bathroom. That was an interesting time to grow up. They realized the bathroom's upstairs. They ended up selling the house and moving, building a small prefab. But they were there. They were told it's a nice starter house. It's an old farmhouse, tiny rooms, tiny rooms. But it was nice and quiet, very quiet. I thought it was suburban. My wife, when she came to visit, said it was very rural. But from her perspective, growing up in Milwaukee and Clearwater, Florida, I guess Hayden Station was rural back in the day.
So were you saying you moved to Springfield 20 years ago?
Oh no, I moved to Springfield 30 years ago. My parents moved out of Windsor about 20 years ago. Yeah, my wife and I met my wife in Syracuse. We've been all over the place. I was in the Army for a few years in the Army band. Thank you, Mr. Hooper, Mr. Johnson, for giving me the love of music. But we settled in Springfield with a large family. It's the cheapest place to live with a large family with 7 kids. It's kind of a grasp to find a house big enough in Windsor for a family of 7. What do my parents do for a living? To this day, my brothers and I can't figure out what my dad did. He worked with computers in relation to credit unions, traveled all over the state and into Massachusetts. Some type of computer expert we still don't understand. But my mother was a teacher at a John Fitch school. When I got to junior high school at Sage Park and people found out my mother's Mrs. Hart, they laughed at me because she terrorized the children.
Oh, no.
Because she was a disciplinarian. If you were misbehaving during recess, she would walk on the playground holding your hand, humiliating you. She felt humiliation was a great form of discipline. But so if anybody spent any time at John Fitch School in the 60s and 70s, they would know Mrs. Hart. And they probably get cold sweats just thinking about her right now. And I lived with her. That's why I'm as straight as I am right now. Another thing about Hayden Station, when it was there, when I grew up, Clapp Road, we called it Clapp Lane, went all the way through from Hayden Station down to Palisade Avenue. They blocked it off when they built the big warehouse so the trains could stop there. But we would ride our bikes, we called around the triangle, from a house to Clapp Lane, down to Palisado, down to the end of Hayden Station Road, and back up to our house. And at the V at Hayden Station, there was a gentleman had a bait and tackle shop. Walt's Bait and Tackle. He was missing one hand. We'd go out there and just talk to him all the time. He's probably annoyed with us, but we'd get our hooks and sinkers from him to go fishing. But everything was self-contained right there. I guess that's about it.
Okay, then thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking about it.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.